Welcome to The Trouble with Football, the show where football's irritations get the spotlight they deserve. Each episode, I sit down with a fellow fan and podcaster who has a bone to pick with the powers that be about our beautiful game. Big or small, serious or stupid, no topic is off limits. And today's volunteer to vent is Stephen Goldsmith. Stephen is the co-host and co-founder of the Wise Men Say podcast, the podcast that was featured heavily on the fantastic docu-series Sunderland Till I Die. Wise Men Say is Sunderland's longest-running podcast, now entering its 13th year. And as well as the podcast, Stephen also reports on the Premier League for Sky News Centre, RTE in Ireland, and the British Forces Radio. And alongside all of that, he also works for the University of Sunderland too, which I think is probably where we find him now. Stephen, welcome to The Trouble with Football. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Just need to clarify that I have logged off for the day and I'm not sitting in a cupboard skiving somewhere, if you're going to expose my whereabouts.
Of course. Who would think that? Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Before we get on to the business at hand, I did want to sort of have a chat about a few things. And the first thing I think is obviously Sunderland themselves. You are, my first question, I suppose, are you a born and bred Sunderland fan? Is it in the family? How did it come about?
Yes, absolutely. As you can probably hear by my very strong Macam accent, which I do have to tone down professionally on occasion, and try and slow down as the main thing. Try and fit more syllables into my sentences, and end some words without cutting the end of the word off. Passed down to me by my dad and by my uncles, as it always should be, and supporting my local team as it probably always should be as well. Few exceptions to that rule, I think. If you're living elsewhere, but it comes from the bloodline still because somebody originally lived in that place, that's fine.
No, I'm with you on that one. Totally. So listen, Sunderland. Wow. I mean, we haven't got time to go through the most recent history of the last 10, 15 years, but we do need to touch on it. As a Brighton fan, I understand a lot of the pain that you guys have been through, but obviously not many of us get a docu-series documenting so much of it. What was that like? What was the journey like for you, and then what was having that sort of docu-series following the pain and the more pain?
I mean, to be honest, from a personal point of view, so we were obviously featured really heavily in season 1. At the time, I was working for a local radio station on the news desk. When we started the pod, obviously, you needed studio access to have any sort of good quality. You couldn't do what we're doing now, and luckily, I had access to that. So we carried on with that for a while, and then when that documentary was filmed, we were still in the local radio station in the studio. Sun FM was the local radio station. Might as well give them a shout out. Guy Mowbray alumni, no less.
Wow. Okay.
So we were in there. And then the camera crew just came and filmed every single podcast we did that season, which was 2 a week. So a lot of hours where, obviously, how everybody knows how editing works in the media. What I would say is you kind of got used to it. Yeah. After the first few, it was just another person in that studio with you with the camera, and you kind of honestly forgot about it most of the time. So there was certainly nothing performative there. And we got to be friends with a couple of the producers and the guys who were behind the cameras. The lad called Suits, who was the director of season 1, was a really good lad, and he got his hands dirty and came and did a lot of the filming himself. So it was one of those where you didn't know how it was going to turn out. We always knew, obviously, Full World 73, the production company behind it, were the real deal, and had a portfolio that included people involved in the Hollywood scene and stuff. So we they had a documentary about Usain Bolt, for example. So we knew that it was going to be good, and we'd always known those lads were Sunderland fans. So I had faith that it was gonna be good. But when we were invited to the first ever screening of it in a local cinema, it was still kind of emotional in a way when the opening credits started, and you thought, right, we're really doing this. This is really going to be about Sunderland, because When that was released, we were at League One at our lowest ebb, so it was good to get some sort of publicity. Although they struck unlucky from a production value point of view, didn't they? That they followed us in our worst ever season.
Well, look, let's talk about it. Let's talk about that journey from where we were to now. How just as a fan, first of all, how has it been? How has that journey been for you? Because obviously, right now, a lot of people, these podcasts are timeless in some respects. But to let people know, you are obviously in the Premier League now, and you are first season flying high. Let's be honest, absolutely flying high. But it obviously hasn't always been like that. And how has that journey been for you as a fan?
Treacherous. I think it's, in a weird way, it's, one of those things where, like, on one hand it seems ages ago, on the other hand it's gone quite quickly. It's, being a Sunderland fan is so fast paced. There's so much media attention on this football club, or on all the football clubs in this region when you're up here, and it's bordering on cliche territory saying that. I understand that, but it's kind of, the football team is the community and the heartbeat of the city, and it always has been. But not just the city, the neighbouring old ex-mine and pit villages, for example, where they will have a red, white, or black and white connection, and it's just a big part of everything. It's got the microscope on it the whole time. It's even more so fast-paced for being a Sunderland fan because we don't do boring seasons.
No.
We got promoted. Where are we? Get my bearings here. We got promoted in 2025. The season that finished in 2024, Sunderland finished lower to mid half of the Championship. Apart from that season, over the last 15 years, Sunderland haven't had a mid-table finish like that. They've been in a relegation battle. They've been in a playoff promotion battle, one of the two. And so it kind of happens very quickly. You're never just hitting a spell where you're like, nothing's happening and we're just sitting in the mid-table season after season. So it's kind of been a fast ride, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like we've slowed down at all. It's just been up and down and up and down. And you've just got to enjoy the ups because the downs can be quite horrific.
Well, let's talk about the ups then, because end of last season, you went through the playoff journey. One, first of all, beating Coventry in the semi-final, which probably was quite a sweet thing because I know there's a lot of history between Sunderland and Coventry over the years. Probably put to bed now, but still, it's probably quite nice. Sunderland obviously get to the final, get past Sheffield United in the final as well. And then you're in the promised land. And how has it been this season so far for you? How's it felt?
It's been great. I mean, the wheels might have come off by the time this recording goes out. But, time of recording, unbeaten at home, and the only Premier League team left to be unbeaten at home, which has come at a sacrifice to the away form, I think. I think they've not consciously prioritised it, but I think such is the output that the players give in terms of the effort for the home matches is probably not sustainable across the season, and they've kind of selected, like, well, let's be good at home first and worry about the rest next season. It's been great. Like I say, you've just got to enjoy the ups because the ground's full and the crowd are up. We've got this great record. When we go behind, we still turn it around, second best in the league for points gained from losing positions. I'll try not to throw too much stats at it because I don't know when this is going to go out, so some of this could maybe look like a complete idiot, but it's been good. It's been, the players are giving everything. They're running themselves into the ground. That's always a starting point to keep any fan base happy. Yeah. And I would go as far as saying, we had maybe a season and a half where we had this feel-good factor when Roy Keane was manager 15 years ago or so, but that was quite short and temporary because he kind of lost his way quite quickly in the Premier League. Before that, I think you're going back to when Peter Reid was manager in the late 20th, early 21st century, I think. And I was lucky to be at a good age, late teens myself during that period, which is a great age to be a football fan. So
it really is.
It's fingers crossed we don't mess it up as quickly as we normally do this time.
I've got a feeling you'll be fine. I tell you that. I really have. As an outsider watching you guys play, and your manager has got something going on. He's a very clever man. The podcast, Wise Men Say, 13 years it's been going. How? First of all,
Mm.
where did the idea come from, and how have you managed to keep it going for 13 years?
So we were in the Premier League, wrong end of the Premier League, and it was during the era where we were sort of hanging on every season, and Martin O'Neill was manager when we started this. And I think sometimes things just happen, and there was a bit of a perfect storm where I just started to listen to some podcasts myself. I know they've been around for much longer than that, but I'd started listening to some myself, and there were some that covered the Premier League that were quite popular. And what I really hated was, we're going to talk about the Premier League games now, and there's still time for recording 2026 still do this on some of the main broadcasters. We're going to go through all the Premier League games now, and then by the time they got to Sunderland, they'd get 30 seconds out. Yeah. And I'll be like, this is no good. Now, there is the BBC do joint Sunderland and Newcastle one up here, but there wasn't anything that really just focused on Sunderland. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say I've been on it. I've been a fan,
Sport,
on the away thing and sort of having a chat about things. And like you say, it probably just feels weird it being a joint thing for a start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. And some of the ex-Sunderland players that get on there, we know, and they've done stuff with us on the podcast, and I think it's constructed quite well. And I think they do a decent job on that, to be fair. But there was nothing just pure Sunderland. And it's like, they need to hold back and they need to be diplomatic. And I completely understand all that stuff. And I just thought, as I touched on earlier, unless you're really tech savvy and you had loads of good equipment you could use at home, the only way you were putting something out that was broadcast quality is because there were a few pods kicking about where the internet made the sound quality terrible. And I didn't want that. And I just thought, I've got access to a studio here. I'm going to have to talk myself out of not doing this, was where I was. I was interviewing Martin O'Neill regularly at the time. Wow. So I had all his audio ready to go that I could drop into it. I went and had a chat with Martin earlier on. And I just thought, I think I'm going to give this a go. And I've reached out to somebody who spoke to on social media. I wasn't like great friends with him at the time. Spoke to him on social media. We were kind of on the same wavelength. We wrote for the same Sunderland blog as each other. And truth be told, while I had the access to the studio and I had the love of the sound of my own voice and all of that stuff, we found out his background, his degree was in media production, so he knew how to piece everything together, and it kind of just fell into place.
Perfect.
And sometimes this stuff happens, and it's a reminder to everybody, isn't it? If you just go out and throw yourself at something, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. Yeah. And sometimes things will work out that you weren't expecting. Don't be overcautious with these things. Don't overthink these things. And we're lucky that we kind of found each other, I think.
Yeah, and like you say, there. I mean, it's clearly worked for 13 years. So it's congratulations on it. Honestly, it's a really good listen. I've listened to a few of them on purpose for my research and things, and it's a really good listen. And it's not too. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and I think they're too relaxed almost, and you need a little bit of structure. You need a little bit of something to talk about. And I really admire you guys. I think you're a really good podcast.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So, listen, we should probably get down to business today. It is time for me to hand over to you for a second. I know there's a few things you want to get off your chest, but there's one in particular that we probably need to talk about as our main subject. So could you tell me, Stephen, what you think is the trouble with football?
I don't know how to phrase this the best way, Neil. I guess what the offside rule has evolved into, or what constitutes an offside now. And we've seen what annoys me about this is it's like we've seen slight tweaks and variations over the years, whether a player's active, whether the player's interfering, to try and improve the experience.
Yes.
To the point where you're just like, can you not maybe just start again completely? And I think what VAR has done to football is it's taken the discretion of the officials out of things, which, and again, time of recording, I don't know when it's going to go out, but, time of recording when Liverpool lose to Man City and the referee has to pull back a goal that was quite comical, where Szoboszlai's end up being sent off for pulling back hard. Instead of letting the ball's gone in the net and the outcome was a goal. And before VAR, the referee says, everybody's happy with the outcome of this situation. It's a goal. I'm not sending anybody off. But because VAR there now exists, they had no choice but to go back and look at it. And what it's done is, it's just made things too black and white to the point where it's ruining things. The offside rule was not, what was it invented for? Why were we given the offside rule?
Okay, well let me give you and everyone watching a bit of a history lesson, right? Just to let everybody understand this, because I had to do some digging myself to really understand it. Okay, so we have to go back to 1863 for when the actual laws of the game were created, and offside was one of those rules that were put into that book at that time. And it was mainly there at that moment because they saw that players were gaining too much of an advantage by literally just waiting near the goal line, and someone would boot the ball up and they would be in position to score a goal. And, you know, things like primary school were doing it, everyone. So they had to come up with something, right? And that rule was in place for many, many, many years. And you alluded to it a minute ago. The offside in its current guise as such was actually changed in 1990. Okay. And they then reduced the concept of the margin of error for an attacker, so that now, rather than what was the old rule where an attacker had to be behind a defender or in front of, depending on how you look at it, but basically there had to be a defender between them and the goal. The rule change in 1990 was purely to say that now if they were level with the second to last opponent, i.e. the defender, they would be adjudged to be onside. So that's the only real change that's happened over the years as such. From 1863, there was a couple of little ones in 1925, and then 1990. And even that now, for me as an old guy, I'm sitting there 1990. Well, that's like 10 years ago, isn't it? Oh no, hang on. That's 36 years. That's 36 years ago, you know. So those are the rules now. And yeah, you're probably quite right. We've moved into a different age, haven't we? And maybe that isn't quite what we need to have now.
No, it's an archaic look at things, and rather than trying to be on the back foot the whole time and scramble backwards and trying to just maybe look at the whole thing and say maybe we are in a day and age where this needs reviewing, because you've just said it. It was brought in to stop people standing around the goal. And when you see some of the things that they're pulled back for now, and they're saying, well, we've got the technology to say it's black and white. Firstly, I'm not convinced that's correct, because no theory is 100%. And I think you can't be precisely sure of when the ball left a player's foot. But when you watch some of them they're pulling back for now, you're thinking, that is not why offside was brought in. See, the attacking player has not gained any advantage there whatsoever.
And that is a really good point. And I think there's been a lot of decisions over the last couple of seasons where VAR, obviously now we have the ability to stop, rewind and play 100 times to check things. And the offside rule around players interfering with play near a goalkeeper, for instance, is a really good example of it. I picked out, sorry to be cheeky, but I picked out a still of a Sunderland game this season with Manchester City, okay? And this was adjudged to be offside, right? So I want to show you this because I think it's important for people to really look at this and say, so this apparently here, this is
he's a mile offside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course he is. So he's offside by the laws of the game, but is he actually interfering with your goalkeeper? Well, no, of course he's not. You know, and I'm being cheeky because that's against Sunderland, but there were a number of these types of decisions last season.
But Neil, I was I sit behind that goal.
Yeah,
and when that went in, right, not one fan, not one Sunderland player looked to the assistant referee and called for that to be offside. Not one.
Exactly.
We were glad when it happened, obviously, and you know, by the rules of the game, that's offside, and it was rightly disallowed. But this is my point. This is where we're getting to. It's not what it was brought in for. Nobody's gained an advantage there. And instead of just scrambling backwards, just maybe even have a look. I mean, you know, like even you know, again, the offside rule was brought in for what we've discussed.
Yeah.
Then you think, right, we're going to put some people in charge of overseeing this rule and this law. So the referee and the linesman or assistant referee. And I just feel like in that moment, they surely should be given some sort of trust to say, I was watching this across the line and I know that player gained an advantage. In that moment, I lived that moment with the players. I was living that game with the players. I lived that moment with the players. I lived those seconds with the players, and he's gone too early. I'm telling you now, he's gone too early. Trust my judgment, and that was great. And some of it will be debated and challenged, of course. And I don't know what the solution is. I'm not coming here with a massive solution about ripping this up and starting it again. Bare minimum, let the players call for a review maybe, and like they do in other sports, and say, and if the officials on the pitch don't think I don't think anybody's gained an advantage from that, I'm going to allow that goal, favour the attacking team, and then if the players can have like one review a game or something, and they call for it, then go from it. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I'm not offering any sound solutions here. I appreciate.
That's okay. You don't have to. The trouble with football doesn't need sound solutions. It just needs a few rants and a few discussions. It's fine. I suppose my question, and you've raised a good point around, the individuals that are refereeing the game, that the assistant linesmen, the referees, they're living the moment and they're looking at things. And maybe one of the answers is to one, you're quite right, maybe rewrite the rules. Maybe that's another option, and try and make them a little bit more future-proof for the technology that we now have. But also the spirit of the game as well, as you were saying. The spirit of the game is that if players aren't appealing, if there's nothing really to look at, if everybody just accepts the fact that it was a goal, there's not really any issue with it in some respects. And there is a obviously recently Arsene Wenger has been quite prominent in his views around offside and the offside law and things. And he is, I think his title is Chief of Global Football Development now, is Arsene Wenger. And he's obviously been trialling a new way of dealing with offside rules in the youth leagues in different countries, and to have a look. And it's called Wenger's Law, which I'm not going to say anything, but naming something after yourself is not, in my opinion, a good idea. But anyway, the proposes that a player would only be considered offside if their entire body is essentially in front of the defender. And the graphic that they give us is sort of like two players obviously looking at a whole gap between the two players. And that's the point that they're trying to create now. The idea that if that actually is something that would make it clearer for linesmen, it would make it clearer for defenders and attackers, and ideally the margin of error therefore is less, and theoretically it gives more advantage to the attacker as well, because they could get quite far in front of the defender and in for a goal. So theoretically you might be making things more attacking in some respects. What do you think about
that? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard where to draw the line, because then if you start trying to pinpoint it to somebody's whole body being in front, then you might get the debate about whether, at the back end of somebody's body, is it actually all front, or can you see some daylight there between the two people? I kind of just feel like if you watch a replay of one of these situations back and you stop it and then you show the audience the line, and everybody is generally on the same page about whether that's offside or not. So the top one, you would look and you say, no, he's fine, and be done with it. If you need to start getting lines out where you start looking for daylight and stuff, attackers get the decision all the time, and it should be a really quick review process. I don't like that officials can't review this stuff either. They've got people in their ears telling them what to do. Why can't, and we'll not deviate away from offsides too much, but why can't officials say, I've given this, I'm not quite sure, can you have a look at it for me?
Yeah,
because that's what they do in other sports and it works. So I just think, again, like one of the stills you've just showed there, if you're sitting watching this at home, they stop it and they show you a still, everybody, I would say, or 99% of the people watching would be in agreement as to whether they'll say, yeah, that's offside. Or if you need to go, if you need to go, ooh,
Yeah, yeah.
That's tight. For me, it's like if you get to that, attacker gets the advantage.
Yeah, and I think that reaction, in some respects, is part of the issue as well around how I'm not going to talk about VAR generally, but the offside, the use of VAR in offside, and the semi-automated decisions now, and all of this sort of thing that we've got coming on. Other people have talked about this in the series, earlier in other pods, and this echoes this as well. And it's the concept that you are sitting either watching TV or, more importantly, you're at the stadium, you are watching the game live, and you feel a little bit of a fear that you can't actually celebrate what's just happened because suddenly, is it going to be onside? Is it offside? Are VAR going to call it back? And all this sort of thing. And with offsides in particular, that's the most reasons that goals are disallowed because obviously someone is offside. And I just think the whole rule, we need to go back to the basics, as you said. The whole rule was about someone goal hanging. That was the only reason it was there. It wasn't about whether they've got an inch advantage or a half a foot advantage or a shoulder or a head. It was about the concept of not having someone literally standing on the goalkeeper and trying to stop the goalkeeper from getting the ball. And that was the only reason.
Completely agree. Can't disagree with anything you've just said. You've articulated that brilliantly, Neil.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, I think, I think it's, there's too much going into it now to try and be scientifically correct.
So do you think
it's if you need to slow it down and start putting lines on the screen to get clarity on whether you think something's offside, then don't bother doing all that. Say either stick with the on-field decision or give the attacker the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And just don't encourage conversations about it. Move on from it quickly. And that's it.
Well, look, we are.
Think,
I would love to take up your decision. I'd love to make you head of FIFA, but unfortunately, I've got a feeling you're not going to get enough votes, Stephen. So,
what was Wenger's job title again?
Oh yeah, sorry. He was. Maybe you. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Maybe you could succeed him as the FIFA's chief of global football development.
All right. That's not a minimum wage job, is it?
I doubt it. So. We are going to be stuck with the technology for a while, no doubt. Would Wenger's law make it better, though, for you, do you think? Is that something that we would want to try? I mean, it would certainly be more goals. I mean, it's more entertainment, maybe, is one way to look at it. Yeah. But do you think that's something that you would want to see?
It looks better than what we've got on what you've just displayed there without, knowing too much about it. And obviously you need to see the full presentation and get all of the in-depth explanations, etc. But that... yes, that in terms of what I've been arguing for and against, then that would definitely fit in more in line with the way I think it should be looked at.
IFAB, they put it out to some of the different teams, and UEFA and FIFA and that, and they've decided that in a conference recently, they voted that they were going to give it more thought. They weren't going to implement it or anything. So it's definitely not coming in anytime soon. They're going to trial it in some more leagues and check and things, but hopefully maybe next year there's going to be another conversation about it. But it hasn't gone away, so maybe that might be the future of offside rules. But it still doesn't answer really your question.
And there are not many more depressing things than when you're sitting at home, in particular, because you miss some of this stuff in the stadium when you're there, don't you? But if you're sitting at home and you watch a goal and you're not really invested in either team, and then you just hear like the sense of resignation in the tone of someone like Gary Neville, who's on Corcom, say, "Oh, they're checking it," and you just think, "Oh yeah. Man." And then you watch it, and it's for an offside like that. You just say, "Why? Why are you trying to take goals away from people?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to ruin this spectacle?" And it's just, don't know what the solution is, but this changes destinies. You mentioned Sunderland earlier there, going up through the playoffs and beating Sheffield United at Wembley, and we were losing 1-0, and Sheffield United scored a second goal.
Yes.
That nobody in the stadium saw anything wrong with at the time. When you watch it back, that's not as clear as some of the other ones we mentioned, because it's like actually when you watch it back, he kind of is standing in front of the keeper. But I don't think any Sunderland fans were calling for it, and I don't think any Sunderland players were calling for it. And had Sunderland conceded that second goal, I think they're getting pumped 4 or 5-0 by Sheffield United, because that's the way the trajectory of the game was going.
Yeah.
As it happened, it completely, from that moment, deflated Sheffield United. And for the remainder of that half, and for the entirety of the second half, Sunderland were the better team, in my opinion. And the momentum changed from that moment. These things can have a massive impact. A massive impact.
Absolutely,
because look where we are at time of recording, look where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it is down to that decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good piece of insight, actually. And I think there are games like that, there are moments like that across the seasons for different teams where if VAR are involved, that's one thing. But even just generally, we talk about the offside rule where, tight offsides are given, because this doesn't necessarily have to be a VAR thing. We watch the FA Cup games, we watch where a linesman has made a decision one way or the other, because it's such a tight decision, whether they're right or wrong. It can be looked upon as on an instant replay, and you can see the fact that it's not a right decision and the linesman has made the wrong decision and there's no VAR. So it's not necessarily a VAR issue. It's the fact that maybe the offside rule itself is just too tight now for such a fast game, for such a speedy, powerful game. The rule, the concept of what offside is, maybe needs to be looked at.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a bottom line to kind of take a full circle, I think, from when we start talking about it, because VAR is trying to get everything correct to the letter of the law, and it's taken away the responsibility and the power from the on-the-field officials to make that call, and I think they're in a better place to make that call.
Yeah.
So if it's not working, if that means the process doesn't work anymore, then it's probably the rule that needs changing, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Stephen. I'm going to definitely add offside to the list, and I will see what Arsene Wenger has to say for himself next time he comes around my house for tea. Thank you so much for joining me this week, Stephen. Much appreciated. You've been a great guest, and I really appreciate you spending the time with me.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Cheers. And thank you to everyone for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe where you can, as it really helps the channel. And why not leave us a review too? And just finally, remember that in football, it's the annoyances that keeps us talking. Stay tuned for more Trouble with Football next time.